I'm Charli. I'm the product manager of Mari를. This slide is misleading. It makes you feel like I'm going to talk all about Mari를 today. And the reality is I'm not really. I'm more focused on talking about why I think you should be teaching Mari를. But to be honest, you just should. I'm going to be talking to you mostly today about the artist's eye and the reality behind what machine learning currently can't do. So when we've been talking to schools as part of just what we do as product managers, we're always talking both to studios, individuals, and also educators like yourselves. And when we're talking, there's a lot of fear about how do we teach with machine learning? How do we combat machine learning as an artist, that sort of thing. So what I'm going to do today is tell you what not to worry about, and then I'm going to hand over to Juan so he can tell you about how to make use of machine learning as a tool as well. So on the Foundry side, machine learning is actually something that we are invested in across all of the products, and for Mari를, it makes a lot of sense. Under the hood, Mari를 is actually all 2D. Across Foundry, our approach is to really hone in on where artists can embrace machine learning. So it's not something to be afraid of. And more importantly, it's not something that's going to be replacing the need for an artist. We want it to be something that empowers you instead. So on the Mari를 side, the main decision factor for us is that we are looking to tackle tasks where they are tedious, monotonous, where they're just really manual, and ultimately you could be spending a lot more time doing something far more creative if machine learning would handle that really boring bit for you. So understandably, as we've talked about, there is quite a lot of apprehension about adding new technology, and that is something that's happened historically as well. For those of you who are worried about either teaching and being replaced by AI, or teaching artists in an AI world or machine learning world, what I do want to stress is that there is a large amount of work that it can't do currently today. And that is the important thing that we should really be honing in on the education side for VFX. Those things are what really make your students unique as artists. Because the artistic process is really not just the final result. It is all of the aside. It is the reference gathering. It is the taking the time to explore the different techniques, the different styles, the different art direction that you need. It is considering the actual world building and the story behind how a prop got to be in that particular point in time, i.e. how the environment's affecting the material, which we are going to talk about a little bit today as well. Then it's also the science. Art is also a science. You have to think about things about how light is affecting the way that you're perceiving a material. You have to think about microsurface theory and all of that fun stuff. And you have to be able to respond to feedback. And obviously machine learning, if you have used only machine learning tools in your arsenal and then you can't go and react to a supervisor's feedback, then that's not setting you up well in the VFX career. And then, it's a little bit of painting as well. So I'm going to use Mari를 as an example just because 텍스쳐링 is what I know and love. But this is going to apply to any software, any 텍스쳐링 application, but also just any artistic process. And I know it's going to help lead into what Juan's talking about as well today. So as an example, let's think about how an AI model might generate wood. It's going to generate you a picture of wood based on the multitude of references it needs to have been trained on. But what it can't then do is go and handle those creative decisions that a texture artist is going to have to go through at each step of the process to get to that final image and that final asset in VFX. So just with this example, wood is obviously not wood. Wood does not exist. There are many different kinds of wood, right? There is oak, there is maple, there is birch. There are different ways that the wood's appearance can be affected from, say, the age of the tree at the point at which it had been cut. And it can also be finished in different ways. So you can stain, lacquer, I can't pronounce it right, but when you burn wood, is it shoshugi ban? I wrote it up there and I still don't know how to say it. But it's very cool and it makes a really unique sort of crocodile, alligator skin type effect in the wood. And most importantly, wood does not just appear out of nowhere, right? There is a story behind how that tree got to be in that particular place, the particular environment it was, and then how that tree was then turned into, say, a wooden plank or a table, whatever way you might be using the wood in the context. So most importantly, the context and the way that you get to that final context is what the artist needs to be able to justify and how they need to be able to make the creative decisions to get to that final stage. So moving on with the wood example, let's build a boat. So specifically, let's say that we're building a bow of a boat for, let's say, like a realistic film or a high-end realistic game. So we're thinking like PBR, texturing, physically based. But that's not just it. We need to be thinking about, okay, what's the time period of this film? So let's say it's Vikings. So then we need to think about, well, in the Viking periods, what kind of timber was actually available to them in sort of Viking age Scandinavia? I've done the research, it's oak. And then you have to consider, how did they make boats waterproof? And really, they weren't that waterproof. They had to fit in between the planks with wool, moss, tar, laid in between the grooves. So all of this kind of research, obviously a lot deeper than what I've just said, because, you know, they have to spend a long time in the art department and in the assets department looking into this. That's all of the research that an artist needs to do before even starting. So now with a little reference on the shape and some basic research, obviously theoretically we do have the materials for a brand new longship. But this is a real ship, and a Viking film is not going to be full of ships that were just invented yesterday, right? These Vikings are going to have gone out, they would have been doing voyages across the Atlantic, they would have spent many years out there. There might have been damage done to the bow. There might have been repairs made. Again, we have to consider the context and the environment affecting that wood. So here are some examples of how the environment affects wood, and shout out to my dad for taking these photos at last minute. If you ever want to scare somebody who's not in VFX, ask them to do something like take pictures of boat textures. They have no idea what that means. But really well done. So wood, obviously, when it's affected by water, it's going to swell, it's going to bloat. Salt water is going to damage the surface, leaving residue and also softening it in parts. And also, if the boat has been pulled ashore many a times, which you could probably assume it has, the salt is going to be crusting on that surface as well and drying out, and the sand is going to be drying out on it as well, as a result, potentially cracking the wood underneath. We might have had things like limpets growing on. They might have been falling off during travel, which would then leave the little rings that you see. Mildew, war damage, repairs. All of those things have to be considered by the artist before we get to the end. Texturing or any kind of art is really the process. And right now, like I said, machine learning can't make those logical decisions that your artist can. So what should we do on the education side? Teach Mari. And to explain why, Mari is really great at teaching you the transferable skills. That means that no one tool fits all. You should not be going into a VFX house or any other really 3D industry as a junior texture artist thinking that you can just use one tool, because they might not use that one tool. Mari is a great way to learn the theory behind texturing, the fundamentals. And I firmly believe, as somebody who did learn Mari first in school, if you learn Mari, you can then go into any pipeline, any industry in 3D, and be texturing very comfortably, regardless of which application you end up using. But I've jumped to the second point there, because most importantly, what I actually believe is that texturing exists outside of the classroom. And it exists outside of the PC. You should not think that texturing begins sat in front of the computer. It does not. You need to go outside, encourage your students to go and observe the world, really get in tune with their artist eye. You know, take photos, investigate. If you look at a material in front of you, like the desk, if you have to hold your head at a certain angle, which I can't do without moving away from the microphone, but learn about things like the glancing angle, the grazing angle, however you might call it, where all materials become 100% reflective. Those are the sort of things that are exciting and that really help you create something believable. And then finally, do things wrong. Know the rules, all of those fundamental skills and science behind texturing of how materials should be perceived and represented so that you can confidently break them to match the art direction you want to. If you don't know why you are choosing to ignore the science, if you don't know why you're choosing to make a mistake, then you shouldn't do it. And really, if you know all of those fundamentals, machine learning really just becomes another tool for you to use rather than something to be afraid of. And obviously on our side, it's not just on you guys to, figure out how to teach texturing. There's work for us to do as well. Our goal at Foundry obviously is to not take the ownership away from the artist. As I said earlier, when we're looking into machine learning, my biggest recommendation is to really enjoy the process of creating the whole thing, not just the final result. Never just learn to paint something as is. Learn why you've painted something in a specific way and encourage your students to do that so that if they are asked to iterate on feedback when they get into a VFX house, they know how to do that. On our side, we are really trying to push on putting the emphasis back on that process. We do have a brand new Mari curriculum, which we are rolling out very soon. I want to say days away. It's been in progress for a very long time and I'm very excited about it. So if you're interested in your school adopting that, please do reach out to us. And that really does start outside of the classroom as well. But most importantly, my advice is seek ways to add new methods to your toolset. And that way, if you can reduce the painful parts, you can spend a lot more time being creative.